allowing aid into the Gaza Strip. Israel's military seized a Gaza-bound aid boat with Greta Thunberg on board on Monday, enforcing a long-standing blockade of the Palestinian territory that has been tightened during the Israel-Hamas war. Israeli forces deported Thunberg on Tuesday. The activists on the boat began their journey to protest Israel's military campaign in Gaza, one of the deadliest and most destructive wars since World War II, as well as the blocking of humanitarian aid. Experts have warned of famine in the territory of over 2 million people unless the blockade is lifted and Israel ends its military offensive. And this is the background to our international story today. Let me invite Mr. Philip Landing to give his bite on this very subject matter.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning to the great Mr. Kwesi Pratt, comrade. I am very happy to hear about this convoy making the attempt to go to Gaza. First of all, the fact that this convoy has been able to travel through Tripoli and the various cities, Benghazi, and then crossing the border into Egypt, or at the border in Egypt, heading towards Cairo to eventually cross, for me is very heartwarming and encouraging, because we know about the problems in Libya ever since the Western invasion, the way the country has virtually been divided into two, with two separate governments at each other's throats. And so there has been very little virtual cooperation between the two sides, and it has been affecting the citizens of Libya and other nationals who live in Libya. They've been going about their normal lives, but those problems have actually made things very difficult for them. So I'm happy that this convoy has been mobilized by such patriotic individuals, and have been able to move with Gaza as their destination. I am very, very happy. In fact, I hadn't heard about this story earlier, because the Western media, unfortunately many of us have been, much of the media coming our way has been from the Western side. And they have been, especially these last few days, the chaos going on in America, with the way Donald Trump is using ICE to chase, law-abiding citizens, or not citizens, they are not citizens, they are people who have migrated into America, finalizing their papers, going about their normal lives, and they are being harassed, and the consequent riots and things. The world attention seems to have been focused there. So this very gallant effort by these patriots to attempt to go to Gaza, I think is a very commendable effort. And I hope that they are successful in the end. Israel has demonstrated to the world its total insensitivity to the pain and inhumane treatment and bombardment of the Palestinians. Yes, we know that there was this incident in last year where some Palestinians kidnapped some Israelis. Yes, we agree. And they responded. But the response has been way above what happened, to the extent that it's now become a genocide against the Palestinians. It is wrong. And the sadness is that the other Arab countries that in the past have shown far more solidarity with the Palestinians seem to be a bit more not so loud this time, you see. So when you have these private efforts, we heard about the ship that was virtually seized and the occupants who were also trying to send aid to Gaza, deported, and then there's this other group that is going. I hope that they will put more pressure on the Israelis, because right now, many of the Western governments who had been turning a blind eye to the atrocities of the Israeli government against the people of Israel, or the people of, Palestine, particularly the residents of Gaza. Many of the Western communities and populace are beginning to rise up and complain that no, their governments cannot sit down. So lately we've had the Italian government, we've had I think it's the Dutch government as well, beginning to raise their voices that look, what is going on is wrong. So I hope that this convoy that is making the effort to go will add more pressure. Already there are over 300 trucks full of aid, desperately needed aid to get to the people of Gaza. Food and medication, urgent. The Israelis have simply refused to allow these trucks to cross, and many more trucks are coming up every day. It is totally inhumane, and we must all condemn it. We must condemn it. It's wrong. Like the article said, since the Second World War, we haven't seen this. And the whole world was sympathetic to Israel because the Nazis treated them like this. So why are you not treating the Palestinians like this? So I wish the people who are organizing this convoy, I wish them well, and safety. I know the Israelis will use their agents to do all kinds of things to try and abort their and spoil their effort. But I just hope that they will be able to get to the Rafah crossing, put more pressure on the Israelis, and hopefully be able to send their aid and the solidarity and show more focus a lot more world attention to the suffering of the people of Palestine, particularly those in Gaza.
Thank you very much, Mr. Philip, for that contribution. We are talking about the convoy that has arrived in Libya en route to Gaza to challenge Israel's blockade. And you're invited to be a part of the conversation. Kindly send a text message or a WhatsApp message to the number displayed on the screen, and we'll be reading your message alongside the conversation. Now let me bring Comrade Kwesi Pratt into this conversation. Let's hear from you, sir.
Well, first of all, those who have organized this convoy and are heading towards the Rafah crossing must definitely be very, very brave activists with a conviction. Because in the past, Israel has killed those who have sought to protest against its apartheid colonial occupation of Palestine. Indeed, years gone by, a few years gone by, there were politicians from the West, who hired a flotilla and tried to enter Gaza to break the siege on Gaza. And the Israeli security forces opened fire, killed some, wounded some, and so on. So Israel has a history of using deadly force against those who exercise their democratic right of protest and so on. So for these people to mass up in vehicles trying to break the blockade, I see, some courageous people with conviction doing what is necessary to prevent the world from sliding down to a thermonuclear war. And I salute them. Now, what is significant is that these are Africans. And since the genocide in Gaza started unfolding, many of us have been disappointed, grossly disappointed, by the so-called Arab states and their response to the genocide. And indeed, it is clear that Africans have played a leading role in the attempt to resist this genocide on Gaza. I mean, you mentioned the role that South Africa has played in getting the International Criminal Court, to pronounce on what is happening in Gaza. There are many other countries, in Africa which have taken a very firm stand against the genocide. Perhaps that is because of Africa's own history and experience. I mean, look, Africa's history has been horrendous. We've been through the transatlantic slave trade. We've been through classical colonialism, and all kinds of things. I mean, there's a time when the whole of the Democratic Republic of Congo was treated as the personal property of King Leopold, you know, of Belgium, and who sought to profit from the rubber trade. So Africans were supposed to make available rubber, you know, for the profit of the king and so on of Belgium. And if you sent rubber which was below the quota expected, they amputated your arm. If you repeated that act, they amputated the other arm, and so on. We've been through this. We've been through the struggle of the Mau Mau movement in Kenya, and we saw the atrocities that the British Empire committed against the people of Kenya and so on. We've seen apartheid and its consequences, you know, not just for the people of South Africa, but for all of us, and so on. So perhaps this explains why the African people, you know, pay particular attention to this and are displaying these levels of courage and conviction. And I'm happy, I'm proud to be an African. I'm exceedingly proud, you know, to associate with all my fellow Africans who are engaged in this battle for sanity in Israel, well, of course, in Israel and in Palestine, Gaza especially. Now, this morning as I was driving to the studio, I got some more disturbing news. The British Broadcasting Corporation and other Western media are announcing that Israel has informed the US administration that it's about to launch an attack on Iran. I mean, that's madness. Complete madness. Complete madness. I mean, the consequences of that attack will have ripple effects throughout the world. Iran is not a small nation. Iran is a force, a major force in West Asia and generally the Middle East. To launch an attack on Iran is to provoke consequences that the world will grapple for years to deal with. I mean, it's total madness. And I'm just wondering why the rest of the world cannot see that Netanyahu is gone off his racks. And to try and stop Netanyahu, because he's going to plunge the world into something we've never seen before. Look, if you look at the bombs which have been dropped on Gaza, they are far more than the bombs which were dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima together. It's difficult to understand why the world has allowed Israel to do what it is doing. And it is not just operating in Gaza. It is bombing Syria, it is bombing Lebanon, it is bombing Yemen. Now it intends to attack the main power, military and economic power in West Asia. I mean, what madness can this be? So we have a duty to take steps now to prevent the calamity of war, not just in West Asia, but war which could have consequences everywhere. It's our duty so to do. Israel must be stopped now. And I get embarrassed, you know, sometimes I get really embarrassed by some of the stances taken by some of our leaders. I mean, I was embarrassed beyond redemption when the former president declared that Ghana stands firmly with Israel and Ukraine and so on. So embarrassed. Fortunately, we have a new administration. I've not heard any pronouncement from the new administration on the situation in Gaza and in Ukraine. If this new administration signifies change, that change must reflect on the stand it takes on Ukraine, on the stance it takes on the genocide in Gaza, and on the stand it will take to prevent this reckless dream of attacking Iran. The Muhammad administration ought to take some measures. Already there's some disappointment about its handling of the Sahara question, some huge disappointment about his handling of the Sahara question. I hope that we will get over that as quickly as possible and begin to play a positive role in international relations, to play a role that takes a stand against racism, against apartheid in all its forms, takes a stand against genocide, takes a stand in favor of national liberation. We are watching.
All right, just a short one on your submission with regards to Israel attempting to attack Iran. And I'm just wondering what the import is with notifying America of what their intentions are.
Well, it's clear. I mean, look, most of the bombs which have been dropped on Yemen, on Lebanon, on Syria, and in Gaza, you know, have been supplied by the United States of America. The United States of America is the staunchest ally of Israel. And indeed, the United States of America has also supplied intelligence to Israel, and so on. You know, the United States of America is also involved in the so-called protection of Israel. You know, the Patriots, and so on, are being supplied by the United States of America. Now, that for me is not surprising, because in the fight against apartheid in South Africa, the United States of America also took the side of the apartheid regime. You know, it has always taken the side of countries which behave like Israel and so on. But again, it is not surprising given the U.S.'s own history. You understand? The U.S. itself was built out of the genocide committed against the original Indian inhabitants of the United States of America. They killed, they maimed, they stole, in order to establish what has today become the United States of America. You know, so Israel just mimics what happened in the United States of America against the Indian population, and so on. And perhaps that is why the United States continue to lend its support to Israel. It's such a staunch ally of Israel that Israel feels compelled to inform it about its adventures around the world. I mean, if it goes and hits Iran, there will be serious reprisals. Iran has a huge capability. You understand? Huge capability. And when the reprisals happen, Israel is going to look to the United States of America for protection. And that's why they are informing them that, look, we are going to commit a crime. There will be consequences for the commission of the crime. And when the consequences do set in, we expect you to protect us. That's what they're saying.
Right. Thank you very much. Right, Mr. Philip London.
You know, you see, that is the whole point.
Yeah.
America, Israel. And that is part of the boldness of Benjamin Netanyahu. Yes, in the past, America has always supported Israel. Israel has been able to get away with a lot of evil. But the current Israeli president has a very strong relationship with the current American president. And so he has been emboldened and is doing even worse than the Israelis have ever done. The Iranians too, they have also learned. They saw what happened to Iraq. The Iranians themselves, they have fought with Iraq before. And the Israelis have been threatening. And the Iranians, they are not joking. You see, there was a time when you always, many people were not regarded. Today, Yemen, who were thought to be a very, underdeveloped and backward people, they have developed their own armaments that can hit Tel Aviv, Yemen. So how about Iran? So Iran is ready. Their supreme leader, he himself, he gave notice to Israel that be careful. Don't think about it. And yet, Netanyahu thinks that he can do it. So he is notifying America to be on standby. All their bases that are nearby, all the troops will be put on standby. So that the moment Israel goes and touches Iran and they start feeling the heat, the Americans will come to their aid. That is why. That is why.
Thank you very much for that insightful contribution. contribution. If you just joined, this is still the newspaper review segment on the Good Morning Africa show. We just wrapped up on our conversation concerning a convoy that has arrived in Libya en route to Gaza to challenge Israel's blockade. But there's this interesting comment coming from one of our viewers. It says, "Good morning, OHEMAA. I wish Hitler was alive. I would have given him the biggest stone from Ghana." I'm still wondering how Hitler spared these genociders. And Mr. Trump sees nothing wrong, nothing about this. Instead, he is rather talking about non-existent genocide in South Africa. Musuku, thank you very much for that message. We'll be reading more of your messages coming through with regards to the subjects that we are about to touch on. So we'll move right into our next topic for discussion, which has to do with the 76 years after birth and successful struggle for Ghana's independence. SMG salutes Nkrumah CPP recommits to socialism, Pan-Africanism and anti-imperialism. I bring my panelists in this conversation. I'll start with Mr. Philip Landing. Comrade Kwesi Pratt is the General Secretary for the SMG, and so we are going to have more details and an in-depth submission on that score. But let me start with you, Mr. Philip Landing. What do you make of this milestone?
Well, thank you again. And let me comment again, like I've done before, the role of the socialist movement in Ghana in keeping up the image and fire of Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. In fact, the socialist movement of Ghana is doing more for the image of Kwame Nkrumah than the Convention People's Party and what is left of it, and its allies and associates. So I want to commend the socialist movement of Ghana. Yes, at Ghana at 50, there was a national boost to the image of Kwame Nkrumah, and that was during the tenure of President Kufuor. And that was even at the chagrin of some members of his own government at the time, because traditionally they were opponents of Dr. Nkrumah, and some of their fathers had direct conflict with Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. So there is that history. But and what we have also seen is that in the diaspora, in the African diaspora and in the wider black diaspora, Kwame Nkrumah has had more of his own place than we have tended to give him here in his own country of birth. And so on an occasion like this, in fact, but for the socialist movement of Ghana, a lot of Ghanaians probably will not even remember that today marks the anniversary. How many of them remember June 12th? How many of them? So it is important that these things, we are constantly reminded of these things. Yes, Kwame Nkrumah made his mistakes. He was human. He had his problems. But today we can all sit back and reflect and say that no, we didn't treat him fairly. And now Ghanaians will recognize and appreciate that yes, there were other external influences that motivated us to feel the way we did about Kwame Nkrumah. So there is that awakening coming up. That awakening that helped, inspired various African leaders along the way, and whose own path has also inspired other leaders, like Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso, and now his new successor, Mohamed Traore. And across the continent, you have constant reference to what Kwame Nkrumah stood for. So it is good that we recognize his achievements. And what I personally would wish to see is a proper re-emergence of the literature of Kwame Nkrumah. The books he wrote after Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown, there was a national policy to seek out his books and burn them. We must revisit that. Let's get those books back in the shelves of the BAM library and all the major libraries around this country. Let us make it part of our educational system. Other countries are appreciating what Kwame Nkrumah has done. It is important. I have a personal problem when I see these WhatsApp messages of somebody who has seen a situation in some Western country and is talking about how this is the white man and the black man. You see, unfortunately for us, there are members of our society who were born with an inferiority of the black man. They were born with it. So with all due respect, sometimes you come across people who with a very high level of education. But still, because of that, they still believe that, yes, we are black men, so therefore, because we are blacks, therefore it's allowed for us to fail, for us to not be successful, for us to be corrupt, for us to be incompetent, because we are blacks. Because that is what the education imbibed, even in some cases, even religion, imbibed into the psyche. And also, because some people were brought up under parents and grandparents who also had imbibed that psyche. They believe that, no, that's what the white man, like it was said in my Cape Coast in those days. You are going to church and see a white man, go home, because you met God. My father had a serious argument with his mother after he had come back from his sojourn as a student in the UK. And he was telling his mother, oh, you know, in the UK we have beggars, and his mother was furious. Furious with him. How can you say a white man is... He said, oh, you go to a train station and you see a white man in a suit with an envelope, with an address, and he asks you to, where is this house? He has come from somewhere. He has arrived in London for the first time. He's coming to visit his son, and he's got the address. He can't read. So he wants you to... My grandmother says it's not possible. It is not possible. You see, so this is how, and of course, it was how they were led to believe. You see, many people, after years, and my father was a die-hard CPP man, die-hard. So in time, he was able to get his mother to change some of her views. You see, so, and this was the light that was lit by Kwame Nkrumah. So on a day like this, when he set up the Convention People's Party, we should begin to remember the circumstances that led to him forming that movement, that party, the people he targeted, and how he was able to succeed in what he did. So again, I just want to end by commending the socialist movement of Ghana. That I'm sure that in other African countries, some of them are even remembering today, whereas in Ghana we're not. And that we should make an effort. Those literature, those books that he wrote, his recordings that have been dissipated, we should get them back and get them back into our system.
Thank you very much, Mr. Philip London. Congratulations.
Well, 76 years ago today, something very, very significant happened in Ghana, which transformed the whole world. What happened today? What happened in Ghana? 1949 had repercussions for the whole world and enabled Ghana to punch way above its weight. I mean, even today, Ghana is a country of 32 million people. Nigeria is a country of 216 million people and so on. And yet, in international relations, the weight that Ghanaians carry is heavy, you understand? Now, 76 years ago, the Convention People's Party broke away from the United Gold Coast Convention to advocate a more radical approach to the struggle for independence. Now, before the Convention People's Party, there had been others. There had been the Aborigines Rights Protection Society, there had been the United Gold Coast Convention, there had been Nkrumah Bonny, even to some extent there had been Ya Santua and others who had taken a stand against colonialism and resisted colonialism. But the emergence of the Convention People's Party changed the dynamic completely. It brought a more radical approach to the struggle for national independence. And it's significant that within 2 years of the formation of the Convention People's Party, as a breakaway faction of the UGCC, Ghana started on the path to independence. 1951, CPP won the elections. Kwame Nkrumah became the leader of government business, so we were on the path to independence. And eventually, in 1957, we gained partial independence, and Kwame Nkrumah became the Prime Minister then, with the Queen of England still serving as head of state. But significantly, on July 1st, 1960, Ghana gained Republican status, which confirmed our independence from British colonialism. Now, it is significant that the Convention People's Party did not only accelerate the pace of the struggle for independence in Ghana, it became the catalyst for the independence movement throughout Africa. And it is significant to note that in 1958, when we held the All-African People's Conference in Accra, under the leadership of Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, many of the leaders of the liberation movements who led the struggles for liberation throughout Africa were in this meeting. And it was Ghana which provided the diplomatic and political support necessary for liberation. We actually even went to the extent of establishing bases for the military training of those who took up arms. And it is not surprising that many of the leaders of newly independent African countries stayed in Ghana. They were here. I mean, Nelson Mandela stayed here. Came through here. He didn't stay here. Came through here. Robert Mugabe actually stayed here and married from Cape Coast and so on. And there were many of them. Many of the Pan-Africanist leaders around the world made this place their home. W.E.B. Du Bois, and so on. All of them stayed here because Ghana was the haven for the liberation struggle in Africa. So June 12 is a very important day, not just for Ghana and the Convention People's Party and so on, but it's a very important day for black people all over the world. It's a very important day for Pan-Africanists all over the world. And it's a very important day for all those who believe in the principles of national liberation and so on. So it's a day worthy of commemoration. And as my brother, Mr. Philip London, said, I think it's important today to mention former President John AGYEKUM for something he did which is so distinguishing. He sought to break the divide between the Dankwa Buzia tradition and the CPP and amplify the achievements of Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. I remember very clearly 1999, 2000, when he was campaigning to be elected as president. He actually erected billboards in all the major cities with his photograph and the photograph of Kwame Nkrumah. Unbelievable from the Dankwa Buzia tradition. But he did it. And also led the effort to build the great alliance of the New Patriotic Party and the Convention People's Party, and so on. So President Kufuor did a lot of work to bridge that gap. Unfortunately, most unfortunately, the Akufo-Addo government did everything possible to widen that gap. And that's even more shocking. What's even more shocking about that is simply the fact that President Akufo-Addo himself was a member of the Convention People's Party up until 1966. He was a card-bearing member of the Convention People's Party. He was not just a card-bearing member of the Convention People's Party, he belonged to the radical socialist wing of the Convention People's Party. And why it took somebody like him, his presidency, to try and deepen the wedge between the Convention People's Party and the New Patriotic Party, it's amazing. It's difficult to explain, you know. But no matter what anybody does, Nkrumah never dies. No matter what anybody does, the history is clear that the Convention People's Party accelerated the pace of national development, accelerated the pace of national liberation, and built the foundation of the modern state of Ghana. Nobody can take that away from Nkrumah and the Convention People's Party. Nobody can take away the fact that the blueprint for national development that Nkrumah, you know, put together is what has brought us. No, that's not exactly what I want to say. It's what has made us survive this turmoil of neoliberalism. Everywhere you turn, every major project is Kwame Nkrumah. And indeed, even the problems we have today, most of them, you can find the solutions in the blueprint that Nkrumah left us. Many portions of the 7-year development plan which Nkrumah launched are still necessary. It talks about green energy, it talks about mini hydro projects, and so on. That is what we need today. It talks about nuclear energy, the deployment of nuclear energy to solve our power problems, and so on. That is what we need today. It talks about an integrated aluminium industry. Today we are still talking about an integrated aluminium industry. You understand? So, look, the Convention People's Party of Kwame Nkrumah, the Convention People's Party of Kwame Nkrumah, and Kwame Nkrumah himself are the pillars upon which modern Africa has been built. And it's important to recognize that.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Comrade Chrissy Pratt. But this is to both of you. I mean, either of you can take it up. Nkrumah's efforts, of course, he's an icon, and his efforts cannot be, you know, swept under the carpet. And we need to more or less relive his efforts and also bring to the notice, or so to speak, the knowledge of the new generation what Nkrumah did and his impact in Ghana, or the establishment of Ghana, and also Africa at large, and even globally. You mentioned his books and the fact that we should bring them back into our libraries, but where are these books? Where do we find these books?
Well, let me show you where the books
Yeah, because it's quite interesting to know that he has some intellectual intelligence sitting somewhere, being shelved somewhere, of which we do not know. Where are these
in Ghana,
materials?
You can find all the books that Nkrumah wrote at the Freedom Bookshop near Kwame Nkrumah Circle, near the Apollo Theatre. I think on Laimomo Street, the Freedom Bookshop is located there. And you can find all the titles. Africa Must Unite, Conscientism, you know, towards colonial freedom, class struggle in Africa. All his titles are there. You can find them. Okay. Not just that, you can find other books by other distinguished African leaders like Modibo Keita, Sekou Touré, and so on. They're all there. And then you can find books on Ernesto Che Guevara, Fidel Castro, you know, Samora Machel, and so on. They're all there. In fact, even the most recent book authored by Dr. Don Atta, you know, on the history of Ghana and the independence struggle and so on, is also there. So all the books are there. The problem is that the books still have to be imported, you know, from the UK, maybe. Because we are not producing the books here. And the title to the books, you know, the rights to the books were given to June Mill, who gave them to some, you know, to a couple and so on. So the books have to be printed in the UK and shipped here and so on. So they become a little bit expensive, you know. The socialist movement of Ghana is trying to get the rights to the book so that it can begin to do it here, so that it can be circulated at reasonable cost and so on. But all the wisdom is in the books. Now, a project was launched, I think, about 10 years ago, which project was called the Legacy Project. And this project was launched by the Socialist Movement of Ghana. And the project sprang out of a research that was done. I mean, we went to the University of Ghana, went to the library of the University of Ghana, the main library, the BAM library, and couldn't find one Nkrumah book. Went to the library of the Political Science Department of the University of Ghana, we couldn't find one Nkrumah book. And we toured all the universities in Ghana and couldn't find one Nkrumah book. And then we went to the central libraries and so on. There was no Nkrumah book at all. So we started raising funds to buy these books and to put them in these libraries. So through the Legacy Project, virtually all the public universities were supplied with all the titles that Nkrumah wrote, and also all the regional libraries and the central library in Accra were given copies of these books. In addition to that, copies were sent to Parliament, you know, and to other state institutions, the Kofi Annan Training Center and so on. So this was an effort to spread these books. But our resources are limited. I mean, this is a fledgling organization. We need resources to expand our membership, to carry out cadre education and so on. So that's how much we have been able to do so far. But the books are available and they can be purchased at the Freedom Bookshop on Laimomo Street or Avenue near the Nkrumah Circle. You know.
Thank you very much.
And in fact, if you look at the Inside newspaper,
right,
you would find an advert there which has telephone numbers you can contact, also for Nkrumah books, you know.
Okay.
So the books are available. I mean, let me see, I think it always carries that advert.
Okay.
Yes, it's here.
Okay.
And it says, it's Laimomo Close, Asylum Down. That's where the Freedom Bookshop is. And the books being advertised include Africa Must Unite, The Great Deception, which was authored by the Socialist Movement of Ghana, The Challenge of the Congo, and so on. And the bookshop is on Laimomo Close, Asylum Down, Accra. And you can reach them on telephone 0504 621 841. Can reach them on telephone 0504 621 841 or 0208 114 589. 0208 114 589. You can find all the Nkrumah books there. You can even find books on Xi Jinping and so on. Yeah, they're all there.
Thank you very much, Comrade Kwesi Franz. But I am personally inspired by the SMG's efforts to safeguard Nkrumah's legacy and to make us understand that Ghana started from somewhere with a revolutionary leader, someone who saw, wasn't nearsighted, who saw afar, and put us on a certain tangent, which has brought us to where we are today. So it's commendable, and we salute the SMG for their efforts. But Mr. Philip Landing, you wanted to add something.
What I'm thinking about is, an amplification of the yeoman's efforts that the Socialist Movement of Ghana has done. You see, because after Kwame Nkrumah's overthrow, there was a conscious effort to destroy that legacy. Conscious effort. And I mean, the government at the time, or the junta at the time that took overthrew him, went all out, spared no effort to erase that. They worked very hard, but because of how deep those the legacy of Nkrumah was, it could not be so easily eradicated. And it has always come up, it has always emerged. Now, what I hope we can come up with is a more committed national effort.
Right.
Because it's been seen as a private function of the socialist movement, and so a lot of people look at it that way. Yes, many of us who are interested know where to find the books. But there are a lot of people too who have their interest. They don't know. They are not. You see, that awareness is not that. We must raise that awareness. That it's not. You see, Nkrumah was seen as he was a socialist. This man was socialist. He had communist ideas, and we are private sector. We are what do you call it? Property owning. We are enemies. We are going to agree. No, the principles he stood for. It is those principles. No matter how you disagree with him, no matter how you support another political party, there are some fundamental principles which are recognized virtually universally in the diaspora. Those are the ones that we must let our people embrace and appreciate. So it is that kind of the thing that to complement the efforts of the socialist movement.
Thank you very much.
Mr. London speaks about the efforts which were made to wipe out Nkrumah and his legacy from Ghanaian history and so on. I'd like to tell you about just one. After the 1966 coup, it became a criminal offense. There was a law that if you hold Nkrumah's photograph, just holding Nkrumah's photograph was a criminal offense. You could go to jail for holding Nkrumah's photograph. Holding, printing, and distributing Nkrumah's photograph was a criminal offense. You could end up in prison. So you see, if we were living in those days, I think the three of us would qualify for prison.
Because we are close to Nkrumah's photograph.
We are displaying Nkrumah's picture here.
Yeah.
The three of us would have gone to prison.
Yes.
I mean, that's how absurd. That's how absurd things became.
Yeah.
Just for sitting here. We could have gone to prison because we were displaying Nkrumah's photograph. Unbelievable. Yeah. This is the extent to which they went.
That's interesting. But I think these historic events should be put out more, especially in our schools and our institutions. Because if you ask me, this generation,
honestly, and it's even getting further and further lost.
Yes, it's getting lost in transit, and we need to do something about it. But we commend the SMG highly for safeguarding Nkrumah's legacy, and those of us who follow, we also put in our best. We also put in our best by the training of Comrade Chrissy Pratt. All right, thank you for always choosing us to bring you insightful and in-depth analysis here on the show. But I've got some messages coming through. This one says, Sami from Accra says that it's obvious that access to Nkrumah's books are billions of miles away from the common Ghanaian. Catch them young is the adage. Get to the youth and the common man because they are in majority. Hey, Sami, what are you trying to communicate? Please make it clearer. All right, so on the score of the Kwame Nkrumah SMG saluting Kwame Nkrumah's CPP, recommitting to socialism, Pan-Africanism and anti-imperialism, we have closed on that subject. Let's move on to our next topic for discussion, which has to do with the drama in Parliament over the nurses' strike. And as we know, the nurses' strike is the most recent chaos that has hit this country. And for context, I would like to bring us to the understanding of what the drama is and what ensued in Parliament. Says that drama erupted in Parliament on Tuesday evening when minority members of Parliament rallied to defend their colleague Dr. Nana Ayew, the ranking member of the Health Committee, after the First Deputy Speaker Bernard Ahiafo ordered his removal from the chamber. The confrontation arose towards the end of the day's proceedings when Dr. Afriye sought permission to make a statement regarding the ongoing strike by the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association. The strike, which began on June 4, has severely affected healthcare delivery across the country and is reported to have contributed to some deaths as essential services remain unavailable. Dr. Afriye expressed deep concern over the worsening health crisis and called for an urgent statement on the matter. He argued that the House could not adjourn without addressing the nationwide health emergency. However, the First Deputy Speaker denied his request, ruling that Dr. Afriye had not complied with the proper procedure to secure space for his statement on the floor. Determined to have his concerns heard, Dr. Afriye persisted, prompting the Deputy Speaker to instruct the majority side to move for adjournment. The Majority Chief Whip, Roxanne Nelson Dafiamepo, moved the motion for adjournment as requested. But just before the motion could be seconded and adopted by Dr. Afriye, attempted to second it himself, using the opportunity to quickly introduce his statement about the nurses' strike. His action infuriated Mr. Ahiafo, who viewed the move as an act of defiance. In a swift response, the First Deputy Speaker ordered the Marshal of Parliament to remove Dr. Afriye from the chamber. This directive, however, triggered strong resistance from minority MPs, who immediately gathered around their colleague in solidarity, forming a human shield to prevent the Marshal from carrying out the order. The standoff created a tense and chaotic scene in the House, forcing an abrupt end to the day's proceedings. Despite the heated exchanges, Dr. Afriye's his statement was not admitted for discussion. And this is what happened in Parliament yesterday. I don't know if you have seen videos or excerpts of that banter. Mr. Landon.
Well, I didn't see, I saw a report of some short part of it. And, but I followed the news of what had happened. It's not the first time we're hearing about this type of drama in Parliament. It's not the first time. The last time we heard about such a drama in Parliament, shameful drama in Parliament, we hoped it would be the last. I don't know whether I should even hope again whether this will be the last. But proceeding on from that shameful drama that occurred, a drama that was totally unnecessary. People just trying to score political points. I thought it was most unnecessary. But following from that, I saw yesterday, after the Speaker himself, not the First Deputy who was in the chair at the time of this incident, but the Right Honourable Speaker himself, after he had had a meeting in chambers with the minority and majority leaders and had advised them, they resumed on the floor of the House, and the minority leader spoke very nicely, very eloquently about the need for them. It is important that in Parliament, you know, they should be tolerance, brotherliness, friendship. They should talk about ideas. They should debate ideas and discuss ideas. It's not a fight. He spoke about his experience in previous the previous parliaments, where he had the benefit of the experience of more senior members and how they handled issues. Oh, spoke so nicely. You know. It was quite refreshing to hear that. Then, after he had spoken at length, and you know, So the speaker, to thank him for what he had said, then invited the majority leader. The majority leader who said, in fact, what the minority leader had said was, he virtually said everything, and he thought it was good, so there wasn't much to say. Then the majority leader started. That the minority, he wanted to go back to the issues that they had discussed behind closed doors, and had come to an amicable understanding, and was trying to revisit the issue, and was beginning to raise tensions again. The speaker didn't allow that, and it ended there. Now, my sadness is that here are honorable members of Parliament who on previous occasions disgraced us all, chewing ballot papers, snatching ballot balls, running up and down, fighting, throwing blows, turning tables. They never learn. They never learn. I remember the last incident, somebody was saying that, even when they were doing the speaker set by a committee of inquiry to investigate the matter, one of them was talking about how his son or his daughter, I can't remember who it was, had asked him certain questions about the way he had behaved and how embarrassed he was. And then they come back into Parliament again and behave like this. How shameful. We should tell them, how shameful. So you mean as a parliamentarian, you can go out there, misbehave, and then afterwards come back and talk nicely and appeal to the speaker. And what lesson are you teaching everybody else? What lesson are you teaching the young people? And the speaker, after that, acknowledged some school children who had come to the house to observe. What message were the parliamentarians sending those children? It is a shame. Look, it's not impressive for you to speak nicely and talk about how we should be friends, we should be... You knew that you were friends, but you went and took off your shoes. Somebody took a picture of the shoe and you're annoyed. Huh? You're annoyed. I mean, look, it's about time we should let these people, they are friends, they are brothers, but hey, we should let them know. You can't behave like this. It's irresponsible. It's irresponsible. We expect a certain minimum level of decency from you that Ghanaians, the children, would look up to. I mean, how? Time and time again. You do it, you come back, you apologize. It's like you have all of them. If they had a kid at home, and that kid goes and causes confusion, goes and messes up, and comes back and comes and stands in front of you and apologizes, and goes and does that, what would be their reaction to that kid? If they had an employee, all of them have their own private business. If you have an employee in your own business who behaves like this, he goes and misbehaves, he does the wrong thing, then he comes and apologizes. Won't you sack him? You sack him. And that's how Ghanaians are beginning to feel about them. Ghanaians are beginning to feel this way about them. And you see the danger of that very irresponsible and sad behavior is that they make the young people begin to lose confidence in that system of government. They'll begin to lose confidence in the system of government. They say these people, they are all the same. And, after all this, the Right Honourable Speaker was reminding them about the image Ghanaian parliamentarians have when they go outside, which takes its origins from what Comrade Kwesi was telling us. The kind of history that Nkrumah laid down for us. We've all benefited from it. We've developed to the extent that when Ghana goes anywhere, people look up to you. They're inside our own parliament. You are behaving like this. It's a shame. It's a shame. I pray that it never happens again. But even from the way they were addressing, after all the speaker had said, and all the nice things they were saying, and some of the things that were happening, it just tells you that these people, they're incorrigible. They will do the same thing again. Give them another few months. Months couple is plenty. Another few weeks. They'll be behaving the same way. Huh? Somebody will be calling somebody's daughter something, somebody will... I don't know what kind of behavior is this?
But yesterday also the majority leader mentioned the importance of going through the rules, because he even mentioned that he has the soft copy.
My sister, my friend,
No.
He has the majority leader. How many years has he been in Parliament? How many years? So, if you have been in Parliament 20 years and you know the rules so well, and you remind yourself of the rules every day, and yet when the Right Honourable Speaker had just minutes earlier invited you into his chambers and you had resolved this matter amicably, and you've come to the floor of the House to just now give the nice pleasantry, you are still trying to go back to the issue. So what are you telling me? You can read that rule book 200 times. It doesn't impress me. It doesn't impress me. If you read the book and you still behave the way you're behaving, it doesn't impress me. They all know the rules. They all know the rules.
Follow the rules.
That is the question. They know the rules. They know it better than all of us. They go for their orientations and seminars. They are constantly reminded. Even in the day-to-day operations of the House, they are constantly reminded of the rules. And then you behave like this. Who would have sympathy for you? They are endangering this country by that behavior. Because the young people will be losing faith in that system of government. And what will be the alternative? Behave yourself. When you disagree, disagree. And let people listen to the substance of your arguments, and let people decide. That is what it's all about. Rather than going out there and misbehaving, unnecessary theatrics, unnecessary confrontation, and in some cases, simple childishness. No, we should let them know. You know, we should let them know.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Landing. Comrade Kwesi Pratt, your take on this one, and then we move on to our next topic.
Well, as Mr. Landing says, I mean, there have been many occasions on which Parliament has been a complete embarrassment. There have been many occasions where some parliamentarians have behaved in ways which have called into question the title of honorable that they carry around and so on. I remember one case where one parliamentarian was actually given a hefty slap across the face in Parliament. You know, I remember another incident where a woman parliamentarian was fighting with another parliamentarian over a seat, and there were videos and pictures of that woman parliamentarian sitting on this male parliamentarian, and the image was something else. You understand? And then the election of the speaker, you remember, where one parliamentarian actually went and snatched the ballot papers and chewed them like a goat. You know, so many incidents. Incidents of total disrespect to the speaker. I mean, chair-breaking incident, overturning of tables, and so on. This Parliament is becoming too rowdy, it's becoming too embarrassing, and something needs to be done in order to restore the image of this Parliament. I mean, all of us, I mean, no matter what your political orientation is, must be feeling very embarrassed about the uncouth behavior of some of these parliamentarians. And these are the people we call honorable. These are the people who take S. Gracia awards and so on. Yes, sir. It's a problem. So something needs to be done. And I'm happy that yesterday the Speaker addressed this problem head on and warned that he may not treat misbehavior in Parliament lightly. You know. And this is not the first time that the Speaker has had to put his feet down. He's done it on a number of occasions, and I'm happy about that. Now, for me, it's also significant that this particular misbehavior, you know, occurred during the discussion of the nurses' strike. I would want to urge everybody parliamentarians on both sides of the aisle, everybody, lawyers, and so on, that in discussing the nurses' strike, we ought to delineate, the boundaries very, very carefully. 2 days ago, I was driving to work, and I switched to Radio Gold. And there was a doctor on air. I was saying that, look, he had to carry out surgery that day on a midwife. Crucial surgery, life-saving surgery. But he was afraid. Because he was afraid that if he cut the woman up, and there was no effective after-surgery care, something else could happen. So he was scared. Because when you go into surgery, you can never tell what the complication could be. You can make all kinds of assumptions about what you find inside the body. But when you get inside the body, usually the doctors will tell you that sometimes you see things that you didn't anticipate. And it complicates things and so on. So he was really worried. So this surgeon calls the midwife and says, look, this is my situation. So I want to postpone the surgery. And the midwife says, no, I'm a midwife. I work in a hospital. I can make special arrangements. That's where the story is. How many of the 32 million Ghanaians can make special arrangements when they are faced with this situation? The Kayai, the commercial drivers, the sanitary workers and so on. They cannot make special arrangements, so they will die. That's what we are discussing. So it's important to recognize that the right to strike is a fundamental human right. The right to strike is a tool with which workers assert their dignity and struggle for what they rightly deserve and so on. It's a right that they exercise in order to fight exploitation.
Right.
No doubt. But shouldn't we also look about the other side of the equation? I'm told that many people have died. Yesterday I saw a woman weeping on television. And what was the case? Her brother had an asthma attack. And they went to hospital, took the brother to hospital. The nurses said they were on strike, so they won't attend to him. And he died.
That's terrible.
He died.
That's terrible.
Now think of the story of Florence Nightingale. And compare that to these actions that we're seeing. I mean, nobody can say that the nurses don't have legitimate grievances. Nobody can say that they are not entitled to a 13th month pay, even though they're only 12 months in a year. So, I don't want to go there. But their actions are leading to consequences for people who are victims of the system like themselves. This man, 31-year-old man who died of an asthma attack, may well be working in a place where the conditions of service are terrible, maybe worse than the nurses. So they should be exercising, expressing solidarity with this young man rather than killing him. But they killed him. Yes, sir, they killed him. They killed him because he's not a nurse. They didn't kill him because he's an oppressor. They didn't kill him because he's a member of government. They didn't kill him because he has, wonderful conditions of service and so on. They just killed him because he's not a nurse. And I cringe when I reflect on these things. I'm saying that this is not an issue over which, we should have minority versus majority and so on. We should be thinking about, ultimately, the welfare of the people of Ghana, especially the disadvantaged. And if we think that way, it will not get to the stage where Parliament is thrown into turmoil and so on. Because we would then be thinking about edifying things. We'll be thinking about things that bring us together. Things Now, there's another dimension of this strike that anytime I come to think about it, I can't help getting angry. Can you imagine? Just imagine. The leadership of the Ghana Registered Nurses Association called a strike and left the country. What?
Sorry.
Unbelievable. The president, she called a strike and she left the country. She's not looking for a resolution. She's not even available. You can't reach her. You can't talk to her. She's out of the country, out of the jurisdiction. What? Where will this happen? In fact, the members of the Ghana Registered Nurses Association should have gone after her. She betrayed them. You declare a strike and you leave the jurisdiction. So the Minister of Health was complaining that he was looking for somebody to talk to, couldn't find them. Telephone calls were not answered and so on. Because she's left the country. She's declared a strike. A strike which can lead to death. People can die out of it. She doesn't care. She left the country. My goodness. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. But this is Ghana, you know. My position is that, look, there are very, very few people in Ghana who can make ends meet. Many people are struggling for survival. There are so many people who go to work, wake up and go to work every day. And what they receive at the end of the month is not enough to pay for their transportation from home to work and back. No food, no water, no rent, no electricity, just transportation. So many people like that, okay? There are even people who go to work and receive no pay. I'm told that bartenders in some of the pubs and so on, you know, they go to work because they expect to be given tips, not pay. You understand? So as for the grievances of the working people, there are many. It affects everybody. Again, if you look at our general economic conditions, they're terrible. The general national economic conditions are terrible. Now, nurses have started today. It is possible that tomorrow engineers may start. And the next week or month, sanitary workers may start. Then commercial drivers and so on. Chaotic. So immediately, I expect government to engage labor immediately, to have a comprehensive look at the national economic situation and the burden that working people have to carry, and work out some arrangements to nip this strike in the bud. Create conditions which give working people the confidence that government will do something about their condition. Otherwise, the strikes have started. It will continue. So immediate measures must be taken. Confidence-building measures must be taken right now, immediately. The nurses have started, you don't know who's going to continue. And in fact, leaders of labor also ought to be responsible. I mean, if you declare a strike and you leave the country, you are totally irresponsible. Completely irresponsible. You may be leading the workers, you may have a legitimate grievance and so on, but make yourself available for negotiation and discussion. You declare a strike and you leave the country. Never heard of it before. You know, my father was a trade union leader. I lived through all my life, lived through seeing these trade union leaders discussing and so on. They used to have study groups in my house and so on. I mean, in those days, I mean, A.M. Isifu's days and so on, Haliga's days and so on, I cannot imagine that the trade union leader would declare a strike and leave the country and come back to his position as leader of the trade union movement. Unbelievable.
Right, thank you very much for that extensive submission, Comrade Kwesi Pratten, as well as Mr. Philip Landon for your insight. Viewers are also coming through with their comments. I'll read some from WhatsApp and go ahead to read some from Facebook. I'll be informed that we are live on Facebook and on YouTube, and so you can join the conversation. And if you're unable to join in real time, you can watch our Facebook, excerpts later. This one is coming from no name mentioned. Kwame from Akosombo. So it's always a privilege seeing Uncle Kwesi. Please, is it good for government to continue spending over 684 million Ghana cedis on nurses and teacher trainees allowances in 2025 budget? Question mark. He's asking. He's also asking. He's also saying that we have so many civil servants whose salary is less than 1,500 currently. Nurses are paid more than civilians, civil servants, and teachers now. Okay, thank you for that comment. Good day, OHEMAA. Workers are right to go on strike, but holding the nation hostage over frivolous demands like height allowance, funeral grants, foreign travels, and 13th month salary at the cost of 41 billion is capricious and unacceptable. Indeed, recent agitations by groups who never go on strike under NPP explains their political motive to sabotage the nation. The strike is illegal and politically motivated, so government must freeze their salaries to deter political actors who play politics with human lives. Thank you, Ken Williams. A few more. Please, the PhDs, degrees and academic qualifications of all parliamentarians should be authenticated to prove their eligibility, because some of them don't behave like normal beings. This is coming from Charles from Japan. Thank you, Charles. Okay, it's the same person coming through with the same message. It says, good morning.
But if you want to check, it's not the academic qualifications that you should check.
Their minds. But that is what it averts our minds to. If we are not acting right, you need some psychological.
Maybe you haven't eaten well that morning or something.
Yeah, maybe.
So I haven't said
mood swings and other things. Right. Jabo in Tema West is saying that it is so saddening that we no longer do history in our schools, and for this lack of history and records, we find it difficult to make good decisions today. For the nurses on strike, we have traveled those roads many times, but unfortunately, it has always been a planned snare that the NPP throws into the wheels of the NDC every time they lose elections. Remember, they vowed to make the country ungovernable, and they are evidently behind all the problems we face today. Doctors went on strike during the early stages of President Tatamil's tenure and refused to be pacified by all entreaties, just as the nurses are doing today, if you have history. What did he do? I wrote him a small letter from Lagos, called on Kofi Annan, the UN, and Cuban doctors were flown in immediately. This is what brought Ghanaian doctors down on their knees till today. Let President John Dramani Mahama do same today, and these nurses, as spoiled children, will be tamed too. All right, thank you very much for your contributions, but we'll touch on our last topic and then we can call it a day. And we are looking at the economy as it expands by 5.3% in the first quarter, and this is attributable to services and agriculture. Mr. Landon, I'll take your view on this as we wrap up.
Yes, but I just want to make a comment about the nurses' strike. You know, one thing that I found very troubling was a statement that came from the mortuary attendants, that since the strike began, the bodies coming in has increased. I mean, it has increased significantly, and they are worried. That should hit the conscience of the... Look, who doesn't have an economic problem? Which category of workers in this country don't have a problem? I think the way the nurses have gone about, they are losing public sympathy big time. And the way their leaders are going about it, they should reconsider. It is most unfortunate, you know. And just to add about the doctor's strike, I remember when President Convoy was president, one of the biggest problems he had was doctor strikes. And the doctor strikes went on continuously. They were never able to completely until President Mills inherited it. So the doctor strike wasn't a situation of doctors going on strike because NDC had come at the time. So as for that distinction, I wish to make. So all we are appealing. Look, Kwesi made reference to Florence Nightingale, how nursing developed. Go to our villages. Our grandmothers, they were the nurses of the community, the old ladies. They were the midwives, they were the mothers, they were the nurses in the localities. It was a natural calling until professionalism came in and expertise developed. So at the bottom of nursing should be a certain calling. If you have some issues, the government hasn't said we won't deal with it. They are saying that let us relook at it because things are different. Things are, challenging. We say no. That is very unreasonable. Very, very unreasonable. So I will plead with them to reconsider. And also, the funny thing was that this confusion in Parliament that we're talking about, the man who started the confusion, or the man whose actions triggered the confusion, I heard him also appealing to the nurses. Well, that was kind of him. And he's a doctor. So I hope the nurses will listen. The pleas of all Ghanaians and reconsider their position. As to the development of the economy, the growth, yes, we're beginning to see some tangible results. The exchange rate coming down, and it has stayed down for a while. It is beginning to appear to have settled. Consequently, we expect to see other prices coming down. I heard in the report that agri production has gone up, but it is not reflecting in prices in the market. Well, we are just entering the rainy season. The bumper season is going to start coming soon. So hopefully, with the exchange rate coming down, fuel prices too have come down, in spite of the 1 cedi levy. It has been brought down from 15 cedis. So if the government explains that, look, we have this problem, let us give us 1 cedi to help address it, I think it's a reasonable request. And what is also important is that the price of fuel is even still dropping. So I think we should look at all these things in totality, and consider, yes, it's good news that the economy is growing at this rate, but it hasn't reached, it's coming, but it hasn't reached the pocket.
But on the issue of it reflecting in market prices, I believe that it is people's selfish interest and the profiteering that is still keeping the prices high.
I am a farmer. When it comes to market prices, it is the market that determines. It is who is going to hold plantain?
But shouldn't we have a regulation?
No. Let me tell you, we've been through there. It doesn't work. It worsens the situation.
Price regulation doesn't work?
No. When it comes to market prices, no way. It is, look, and then what helps is when we have an effective distribution system.
Okay.
You see, Nkrumah set up food production corporation. State farms were producing the food. Then there was food distribution, because certain parts of Ghana will have a bumper crop, other areas will be. Then you must have an effective distribution. So where it is in excess, it goes to where it is lacking. And then there's a stability in price.
Right.
So additionally, when you go to Wenchi maize has always been cheaper than in Accra. But as the logistical thing has improved, the price difference hasn't been too different. It's mostly the transport fares that make, and of course, profit margins that make the difference. So, in terms of food prices, that one is market determined, entirely.
Thank you very much, Mr. Philip Lande. Talking about maize, now maize has a price. One thing like my finger, maize like this, 7 Ghana cedis. Roasted one.
Yeah, it's just showing that it still hasn't reflected. Another thing too, see, another thing too that happens sometimes that when people have a bit more disposable income, you see, sometimes there's a higher demand for some of these things too as well. So that, you see, so that's how it works. At the end of the day, that's why I'm saying that we are in June. By August, we should begin to see a manifestation of the price reductions. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Comrade Kwesi Pratt, please wrap up for us.
Something is definitely happening.
Oh, yeah.
We are all confused about why it is happening, whether it will stay or get evaporated and so on. But so many things are happening. And one of the things that is happening is that, you know, the cedi went all the way up to 17 to $1. When I checked yesterday, I mean, it came as low as 10. When I checked yesterday, it has started moving up slightly to between 11 and 12 per dollar. Something is happening. Inflation is coming down. Again, something is happening. And this morning, the graphic has a very elaborate report on the state of the economy. And we don't have a lot of time, so I'll just read a few paragraphs, you know. And there's the graphic report on page 13, which says the economy expands by 5.3% in first quarter. Services and agric lead the recovery. And the story is by AGYEKUM Zurich. Never saw this name before. My first time. Interesting name. It says Ghana's economy recorded growth of 5.3% year-on-year in the first quarter of this year, marking an acceleration from the 4.9% growth recorded in the same period last year. The rebound, according to the Ghana Statistical Service, was primarily driven by solid performances in information and communication, manufacturing, wholesale and retail trade, repair of motor vehicles, transport and storage, and finance and insurance sub-sectors. Altogether, these sectors contributed about 84.5% of the 5.3% growth. Now that's very interesting. This momentum reflects more than just numbers. It signals recovery and the confidence of an economy finding its rhythm in a very complex global environment. The government statistician, Dr. Alhassan Idrisu, told journalists at a press briefing in Accra yesterday. He said public administration, defense, social security, education, water supply, sewerage, waste management, and remediation, and forestry and logging were the main subsectors that contracted in the first quarter of the year. This is the graphic report. I have nothing more to add.
All right, thank you. Just as stated in today's edition of the Daily Graphic, Comrade Kwesi Pratt has done us the honors by reading what the report says. But thank you so much for choosing us to bring you in-depth analysis and what seems to be that thing that rightly starts your day. I want to say a big thank you to Comrade Kwesi Pratt. Thank you, Comrade Kwesi Pratt, for always serving us with your wisdom and insight, as well as Mr. Philip Lande, for serving us with your wisdom and insight. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. But we are back tomorrow to bring you more. I am OHEMAA AGYEKUM, and this has been the Thursday edition of our newspaper review segment. Catch you same time tomorrow. Have a good one.